All right, let's talk about something that's super important for web accessibility, but also kind of easy to mess up. I'm talking about ARIA. We're going to break down the 5 golden rules that honestly every developer needs to know to get this right. So let's get into it.
But let me start with a question for you. What if that little accessibility fix you just added, that ARIA attribute you thought was helping, is actually making your site worse for some people? It's a real possibility, and it's exactly why these rules are so important.
Okay, so let's make sure we're all on the same page. What even is ARIA? Well, the official definition talks about making web apps more accessible, especially the fancy, dynamic stuff. But here's a simpler way to think about it. ARIA is like a set of extra instructions you can give to assistive tech, like screen readers. It tells them what an element is and what it's supposed to do when plain old HTML just isn't enough. And that brings us right to our first rule. Honestly, if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this one. I like to think of it as the prime directive of ARIA. And the rule is just this. If you can use a native HTML element that already has the behavior and meaning you need, then you should do it. Period. Why? Because the browser has already done all the hard work for you. A real button element? It's already focusable. You can use it with your keyboard, and screen readers already know to announce it as button. You don't need to build all that from scratch. Don't reinvent the wheel. You see this a lot, actually, people adding a ARIA that is totally unnecessary. For instance, putting role equals button on an actual button element. It's like putting a sticker that says car on a car. It's redundant, right? Same thing with using ARIA required true on an endpoint that already has the required attribute. It's just extra code that clutters things up and doesn't actually help. Okay, so rule 1 is use HTML first. Simple enough. But what happens when you can't? What if you have to build a custom component? Well, that's where our next set of rules comes in. These are all about making sure your custom stuff behaves the way a user expects it to. Rule number 2 is a huge one. Do not change the built-in meaning, the semantics, of a native element. If you do this, you're setting someone up for a really confusing experience. It's like you're telling their screen reader that something is a cat when its fundamental DNA is that of a dog. It just doesn't compute. Here's a classic example. You should never take a heading like an H2 and try to turn it into a tab by just slapping role equals tab on it. That's a huge no-no because you're overwriting what it is. The right way to do it is to wrap that heading in something neutral like a div and put the role on the div. See the difference? You preserve the heading's meaning while adding the new role around it. And this is the key thing to get. When you add an ARIA role, you are completely replacing the element's original purpose in the accessibility tree. That's the map that screen readers use to understand the page. It isn't an addition. It's a full-on substitution. Let's move to our third rule, and this one is an absolute deal breaker for any custom thing you build. If a user can click it, tap it, or drag it with a mouse, they must be able to do the exact same thing using only their keyboard. No exceptions. And this means you, the developer, have to actually code this behavior in. Let's say you're building a custom button. You have to make sure it can get focus with the tab key, and here's the part people often forget. You have to program it to activate with both the Enter key and the Space key, just like a real HTML button does. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Our last 2 rules are all about perception. This is about how assistive technologies see and understand your components. If you get this wrong, you can create elements that are basically invisible, or even worse, just confusing. Rule number 4 is super specific and super important. You should never, ever use rule equals presentation or ARIA hidden equals true on an element that a user can land on with their keyboard. Those attributes are literally designed to hide things from screen readers. And here's why that's such a disaster. If you break this rule, you create what's called a ghost control. A keyboard user will tab onto it, they know their focus is somewhere, but the screen reader announces absolutely nothing. Can you imagine how disorienting that is? It's like focusing on an empty void. And that brings us to our 5th and final golden rule. Every single interactive thing on your page, every button, every link, every input, has to have an accessible name. A name is simply what a screen reader says out loud to let the user know what that control is for. Without a name, a button is just button. An input field is just edit text. Pretty useless, right? Think about a simple form. You might see the words username sitting next to an input field. Visually, it makes sense, but to a screen reader, they're not connected at all. It's just an anonymous box. But by adding a simple attribute like ARIA label, you give that input a proper name. Now, the screen reader can clearly announce username, edit text, and the user knows exactly what to do.
So as we start to wrap this up, what's the big idea here? What connects all 5 of these rules? It really comes down to one thing: building with intention. ARIA isn't some magic powder you sprinkle on your code to make it accessible. It's a very precise communication tool. So let's be absolutely crystal clear on this. Adding an area role only does one thing. It changes the element's meaning in the accessibility tree. That's it. What it does not do is change how it looks. It does not add keyboard controls. If you put role equals button on a div, you're making a promise. You're telling the user, hey, this is a button. And now it's on you to add all the JavaScript to make it act like one. So there you have it, the 5 golden rules. Number 1, use HTML first, always. 2, don't change an element's native meaning. 3, everything interactive must work with a keyboard. 4, don't hide focusable things. And 5, name all your interactive elements. Stick to these and you'll be using ARIA as the powerful tool it's meant to be, not as a source of more problems. And that really leaves us with one final question to take back to your own projects. Is your code just working, or is it truly inclusive? It's easy to build something that works for some of us. The real challenge and the real reward is building something that works for everyone. Thanks for joining me.